Kunitsu-Gami, a game that honestly is almost perfect and deserves a lot more praise than it actually got. Before we get into this video, I just want to say sorry for being very inconsistent the last month or two. I've been dealing with buying a house right now and a lot of moving, so that's been really fun. A lot of paperwork and stuff, so all the boring stuff, but that's pretty much where I've been, and I'm going to be getting back onto a more consistent schedule now, but at least for that time, I was dealing with all that stuff. But now that we're done with that, we can get back into the videos, and this is the first one we're going to start out with, which is a review on Kunitsu-Gami. Kunitsu-Gami is honestly one of the more exciting games that came out this year. I was actually excited for it since it first got shown off. It looked really weird, but it looked fun. I don't know, it just gave me a lot of like RTS vibes even before they showed off that type of gameplay. And it honestly lived up to a lot of expectations that I had for the game. Honestly, there wasn't that many big ones, but there was some expectations there for like what type of gameplay I wanted, and they delivered on those, and honestly on a lot more. So let's get right into this. So what is Kunitsu-Gami? It's an odd blend of an RTS slash tower defense and a little bit of a hack and slash all in one thing. It's kind of an odd mix. You wouldn't actually expect any of these things to actually fit together and work well, but it honestly does a great job at what it wants to be. It's really odd, and I hope other developers actually take some inspiration from this type of stuff and actually go work on more unique style type games just like this. To be honest, all of them kind of fit together. It does leave a little bit of leeway where some don't feel as fleshed out as the others, like the hack and slash part of it. The combos and stuff aren't really that fleshed out, but there is a lot more stuff to it than you would actually expect. It's the same thing with the RTS part. It could have a little bit more, but it honestly feels a lot more fleshed out than you would actually think, and same with the tower defense quote-unquote vibe. It actually feels a little bit more fleshed out than you would actually think. But let's get right into how that is, and we'll talk about the combat first. The combat in the game honestly feels pretty fun. This is where the hack and slash part comes in. Your character has two different like stances that he can do. The first one that you use is the generic one that you get right off the beginning of the game. You actually play through almost a full game at the beginning just using that stance, and honestly it's not all too bad. I wish there was a little bit more combos to it. Even with the other stance that you get, it's always X, Y, X, X, Y, X, 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 Y, or just pressing Y. It's a little generic, but the combos look cool. Like everything has like a cool like flair to it. It looks like awesome, and just like the coloring and stuff. ADHD overload type thing. But it looks awesome and it feels pretty good, and the combos, if you can get them down, can work really well together, and you can wipe out hordes of seeds without even trying to. And the other stance is kind of the same thing, just a little bit slower, but it hits harder, and that's probably my favorite stance. Well, there is only two, but that one is 10 times better in my opinion. It's a little bit slower, but it's a quick attack once you get it through, and it just feels right. But it's the same thing with the combos. There's only the same generic ones where you just do the X, Y, etc. The other part of the combat that I thought was pretty entertaining, at least with just the main character, is you end up getting these like guards for your sword, and it does change up the gameplay. Like you get different types of power-ups that do either a radius of damage, or you do like one solo attack that does a lot of damage to like a boss or whatever you're trying to hit. And either you could use that, or you can put a bubble around your princess that you're pretty much defending and keep her defended, or you can get like a morale boost that gives your allies more of like a defense or attack buff, which is cool. I'm happy that they added stuff like that. It fleshes out the gameplay a little bit more instead of just having the generic stuff. And the only other thing that I could say really with that is there's also little talismans that you can grab, and when you put those on, they do different varieties of things. Like sometimes you start with more crystals, or sometimes you start with more of an attack buff, less health, but your person that you're defending gets more, stuff like that. It's cool. It's honestly not like the most advanced or the most exciting type thing. You can see this in hundreds of other games, but I don't know, it just feels right in this game, if that makes any sense. So what about the RTS aspect to the game? Honestly, this was done really well as well. You end up having a whole bunch of different varieties of classes that you get to pretty much control and decide how you're going to play through the level with your princess and how you're going to defend her and get her to the end goal. So pretty much you're taking out these like gates, so you need to make sure that you can get them to the gate without them dying. So pretty much all the different types of classes you can really get, I'll just name off a couple, is like an axeman. He is just a generic infantry guy that can do like variety of damage, and he's kind of like a radius guy. He's not all too bad. We also have like archers, muskets, cannoneers, priests, monks, a whole bunch of different stuff. Honestly, I'm really happy how much there was. After like unlocking a character, I was like, okay, that's probably it. But it just kept going. There is honestly a huge variety. There's 12 different classes that you get to have part of your like group, and they all are used for like different types of battles, and they all have some type of usage. Like when you use a musket guy, you're doing like one personal attack against like an enemy. Yeah, sure, it does hit a spread if they are in a line, but it's more of like a hard hitter, while the archer can shoot multiple arrows and hit multiple enemies around them, while the musket cannot do that because it has to reload after one shot. So it's interesting how they kind of like made them different. Same thing with like the axeman. He's a lot faster at swinging his axe, and he can get more damage out in like a quicker spurts. But with like the spearman, he is going to be the slower type, and he'll just keep poking at the enemies and doing a lot more damage than the axeman would do. And I really like that. It's really cool. You wouldn't think any of this stuff would be all too interesting, but it's honestly really fun, and the way they set it up was really entertaining. Don't get me wrong, like this is how most of these types of games are, that like with RTSs, but they made them have their own like unique looks, styles, and they even have upgrades in this game, which I'll go into a little bit later. But you pretty much just feel like everyone has like a place in the group, and that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, there are certain classes I don't really like using. I forget what the dude's called, but he looks like a sumo wrestler. Don't use him at all. Same with the priest, not a huge fan of that, but the one that prays and stuff and spawns like a huge demon, I use that one all the time. That guy's OP, and it's really cool. Same with like every other class, I love them, mostly the ninja. That one, I personally would have used no matter what, even if he was bad, just because he looks cool. But let's get into the last part, the tower defense. The tower defense in this game is honestly probably the least fleshed out thing in the game. So pretty much what you're doing the whole time is you're, of course, bringing her to the gates to destroy them. So you can build a couple defenses throughout like the levels, and they actually do help a lot, but it's not like advanced enough to make it really noteworthy in this game. So pretty much what you're doing throughout the day is you're moving her to the next location, but you have like a time limit throughout the days until before it hits night. And when night hits, that's when the demons start coming out and she stops moving for the rest of the night. So you pretty much have to go around and build these defenses as well as you're like building your squad and getting yourself ready as well. So pretty much what you can build is like these cannons that shoot explosives off at the enemies. You can build gates that stop the demons from coming through until they break the gate. And same with like a drum, it stops the enchantment that's on these enemies so that they don't have like this special buff that makes them stronger, so they can do more damage or even take more damage. And I really like it, but I felt like there should have been a lot more to it. It felt like after a bit, I was like, okay, this is probably my least favorite part of the game because there's not much to it. But it wasn't that bad, and I thought it was a cool throw-in. The last thing, really, I forgot to throw in about the game is it's kind of a city builder, too. It's kind of weird. This is where, like, the upgrading and stuff comes in. So, pretty much what you have to do after you take over, like, a base, you just can go in and you can like make these bases a lot better, and you add like different like buildings, statues. You just have to repair everything in the village, and you get rewards for doing it. And then if you get everything fixed in the village, you get like a major reward. But there's a tent there, and this is where the important stuff comes in. Once you go into the tent, this is where like all the upgrades are. So you can upgrade all the people part of your squad, but you can also upgrade yourself. And this is where your other stances come in, where you can get archery, stuff like that. And it's really cool. It's pretty fleshed out, honestly. This was probably the most fleshed out part of the game. When you go in there, there's upgrades for every single dude, and they even tell you what that does and why it's important to get this person upgraded. And after the first playthrough of the game, you cannot get them all upgraded. You have to go through a second playthrough, which I did, and I 100%ed the game and got every achievement. And after I did that, the game is really easy now, but it's a really hard grind, and it's really fun. I actually enjoyed how much like there was to the game and how challenging it could be. But once you're done like collecting a whole bunch of upgrades and like doing that type of stuff, you also get to upgrade yourself, and you get to collect like niche things that aren't really that important, like these plaques, where you can go see like the enemies that you fought throughout the game, and there is a lot of them. Also all the animals that you've seen, which there's a lot of those too. And there's also scrolls that show you like a kind of a story. And it's cool. Like, it's stuff that you don't really need in the game, but it's just kind of there for you to see. And I honestly enjoyed that. But let's talk about the story a little bit. Before we get into this part, I just want to say there is some spoilers in this. By some spoilers, I mean I'm probably just going to spoil everything in the story because there's not really much of one. But let's get right into this. The story of this game is you, So, and Yoshiro are going through the mountains and taking out pretty much all the seeds and ridding the mountain of like defilement and stuff by praying to her goddess for protection and stuff. It's somewhat of an interesting story, but aside from the first couple cutscenes, there's not much to the plot. The only like noteworthy thing is like halfway through the story, she starts becoming a crystal, and it's not much more to it until you beat the game and get into New Game Plus. So pretty much what you're doing throughout it is just doing like these dances and rituals to take down these like gates, and she's slowly but surely pretty much dying. And once you hit the end of the game, she pretty much just gets wiped out, which is interesting. You wouldn't really expect that to happen. But the land is free and it's all happy once more. But when they get into the second playthrough is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So after you do that, at near the end of the second playthrough, you can end up going and fighting a secret boss after you get through the plot again. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. It's Curso, and you pretty much fight yourself. And after you beat yourself, you pretty much die and she gets to survive. And you're pretty much added to the quote-unquote, like, they pray for you, and, like, you're pretty much part of their gods and goddesses. And So is actually Yoshiro, which is somewhat interesting, but aside from that, like I said, there's not much to the plot. I thought it was interesting, but I am not enough of a deep diver to understand what's really going on here. And that's the only thing that sucked for me, is I honestly don't know if there's any more to it, but I'm pretty sure that's just like the main highlights of like what the plot is. So if you're looking for a game with like a major plot or some like key excitement to it, I wouldn't look at this game for it. But what's the last couple little highlights of the game? Honestly, the only other things that you can really throw in about the game is like the objectives. I thought they were somewhat fun, but it's not like anything that you really need in the game. They are kind of fun, but they can be somewhat annoying depending on which levels you're playing. Like certain ones say like don't take any damage. That's fine, whatever. But like then there's ones that are like you can't do this, you can't do that, which can get somewhat annoying, but they give you the objective points to pretty much upgrade your characters, so you pretty much are forced to do them, which somewhat sucks. But aside from that, there's not much else to the game, aside from, like, you know, all the types of gameplay that I told you about with the tower defense vibe and RTS and the hack and slash vibe. So is the game actually worth playing? Like, going through and seeing all this happening, mostly with like a story that's kind of whatever, can be kind of a throwaway? Yeah, I would say definitely. With this game, it is, I'm pretty sure, $50. I went through and got the purchase of the game. But if you're not really interested in spending that much, if you think that's too steep, it is on Game Pass. I would definitely tell you to go check it out on there. This game deserves a lot more praise than it got because it kind of just got swept under the rug because of all the games that are going to be coming out. And it's just kind of like a niche game, but honestly, it fits a lot of people's niches, rather surprisingly, more than you would actually think. But let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments down below. If you guys are going to check out this game, let me know and what your thoughts are. If you have checked it out, like if you enjoyed it or you hated it or whatever. But if you guys have any suggestions for any other content to check out, I'll make sure to check it out as quick as possible. But I'll make sure to see you guys next time. See ya.